I never thought a single go live button would be the thing to dismantle my entire life, but standing there in the principal's office, watching my own face on his computer screen while thousands of strangers commented on my downfall in real time, I realized there was no going back. I had spent months being the invisible kid, the one everyone walked over, until I decided to turn the cameras on the people who thought they were untouchable. Now the school board is threatening to expel me, the police are involved, and my parents won't even look me in the eye, so I have to ask you, was I really the villain for exposing the truth? Or did I just play a game that everyone else was already winning at? Tell me, if you were pushed to the edge by people who were supposed to protect you, would you have stayed silent, or would you have hit record? Let me take you back to how this all started, because it wasn't just about a prank or getting views. It was about survival in a place that felt more like a prison than a high school. My name is Leo, and for 3 years, I was the guy who sat in the back of the class with my hoodie up, just trying to make it to 3 p.m. without being noticed. But in a school like Roosevelt High, being unnoticed is a luxury I didn't have. The school was run by a group of kids we called the Vanguard, a bunch of rich, entitled athletes and influencers who had the teachers in their back pockets. Leading them was a guy named Jax, the kind of person who could ruin your entire reputation with one TikTok post. For months, Jax and his friends made me their personal project, documenting every L I took, from tripping in the cafeteria to being rejected by my crush, and posting it for the whole school to see. I complained to the counselor, Mr. Henderson, but he just told me to have thicker skin, and reminded me that Jax's father had just donated a new scoreboard to the gym. That was the moment I realized the rules didn't apply to everyone. I started carrying a small, high-tech camera, no bigger than a button, hidden in my backpack strap. It started as a way to gather evidence for a formal complaint, but then I discovered the world of justice streams. I found a platform where people loved watching bullies get what they deserved, and I realized I had the ultimate content right in front of me. I spent weeks testing the setup, making sure the audio was crisp and the connection was stable on the school's guest Wi-Fi. I created an anonymous account called the Ghost of Roosevelt. And I started small, just filming the way the cafeteria staff were treated or how the popular kids cheated on their finals. The first few streams were nerve-wracking. I remember sitting in the library, my hands sweating as I watched the viewer count climb from 10 to 100, then 1,000. I was terrified that someone would see the tiny lens or notice me standing a little too close to the popular table. I saw things that made my blood boil. I caught the English teacher, Mrs. Gable, mocking a student with a learning disability when she thought the classroom was empty. I recorded the star quarterback, Jax's best friend, dumping a carton of spoiled milk into a freshman's locker just for the clout. Every time I captured one of these moments, the chat would explode. Expose them, they'd scream. Don't let them get away with it. It was addictive. For the first time, I wasn't just a victim. I was a witness. I was the judge and the jury, and the internet was my executioner. I began to spend every waking hour planning my routes through the school hallways, identifying the blind spots where the security cameras didn't reach, the places where the real shadows of Roosevelt High lived. I bought a better microphone, one that could pick up a whisper from 10 feet away, and I learned how to move with a quiet, ghost-like precision. My grades started to slip, and my parents noticed I was becoming more withdrawn, but they just thought it was typical teenage angst. They had no idea I was running a digital revolution from my bedroom. By the second month, I had a dedicated following of over 50,000 people who tuned in every morning to see what I'd uncover next. It felt like I was a spy in a war zone. I saw things nobody was supposed to see: the head cheerleader selling stolen exam keys, the varsity quarterback berating a freshman until he cried, and even Mr. Henderson taking a gift from a parent to change a grade. I was documenting the rot, and for the first time in my life, I felt powerful. I wasn't just Leo the loser anymore. I was the guy with the lens. But the pressure was building. Jax and his crew knew someone was leaking their secrets. They started a witch hunt, checking phones and intimidating anyone they suspected. They even cornered me one day in the locker room, demanding to see my social media accounts. I played the part of the scared, stuttering kid perfectly, and they laughed and shoved me aside, never suspecting that the very strap they grabbed was broadcasting their faces to 40,000 people at that exact second. I had to be perfect. One slip-up, One reflection in a mirror, and I was finished. My heart would race every time I walked past them. My backpack strap hummed with the heat of the transmitter, and I'd wonder if this was the day I got caught. I started narrating the streams through a text-to-speech program in my earbud, so the audience knew the context of what they were seeing. The chat would fly by so fast I could barely read it. Thousands of people calling for justice, telling me to go deeper, to find the big one. The paranoia in the school was becoming a physical thing you could feel in the air. Teachers were looking over their shoulders, and the Vanguard was becoming increasingly violent in their attempts to find the ghost. They started a bounty on my identity, offering $500 to anyone who could provide proof of who was behind the account. I saw my friends, well, the people I thought were my friends, whispering and looking at everyone with suspicion. It was a dark, heavy atmosphere. One afternoon, I found a note in my locker that said, "We're watching you, Ghost." My heart nearly stopped. Did they know? Was it a bluff? I spent 3 days offline, hiding the camera in a hollowed-out book under my bed, convinced that any moment the police would kick down my door. But the hunger for the truth, and honestly the thrill of the power, drew me back in. I realized that if I stopped now, everything I had done would be for nothing. The bullies would win, and the school would go back to being a place where the rich and powerful could crush anyone they wanted. I decided I couldn't just be a witness anymore. I had to be an architect of their destruction. I started looking for the ultimate evidence, the one thing that would make it impossible for the school board to look the other way. And then I found it. I overheard a conversation about a hazing event planned for the upcoming pep rally. Something that sounded dangerous, maybe even illegal. They were calling it the Gauntlet. I knew that if I could stream that live, it would be the end of the Vanguard's reign. I spent the night before the rally unable to sleep, my hands shaking as I checked my gear for the 100th time. I had to ensure the battery wouldn't die, and the signal wouldn't drop in the concrete-heavy gym. I felt like a soldier prepping for a suicide mission. My room felt smaller than usual, the shadows on the walls looking like the people I was about to destroy. I wondered if I was becoming just as bad as them, using people's lives for entertainment. But then I remembered the face of that freshman covered in milk, and the way Mr. Henderson laughed off my complaints. I knew the stakes were higher than they'd ever been. If I succeeded, I'd be a hero to the kids who had been bullied for years. If I failed, I'd be the kid who got arrested for illegal surveillance. I was standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down at the wreckage of my old life, and I was ready to jump. So that's the situation I was in. And I had to make a choice between my safety and the truth. Before I tell you what happened when the cameras started rolling at that rally, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have risked everything to expose the bullies? Or would you have walked away to save yourself? The day of the pep rally arrived, and the energy in the gym was electric but dark. The entire school was packed into the bleachers, the music was blaring, and the teachers were distracted by the festivities. I positioned myself near the equipment room under the bleachers, where I knew Jax and his crew were hiding a group of freshmen. My stream was already live, and the viewer count was exploding. 100,000, 200,000. People were tuning in from all over the world to see the Roosevelt reckoning. I could see the comments scrolling by in a blur. Show us. End them. Be careful, Ghost. I clicked the camera into high-def mode and crept closer. The smell of sweat and old floor wax was overwhelming. I could hear muffled cries and the sound of heavy objects being moved. What I saw when I peeked through the gap in the equipment room door was worse than I imagined. They weren't just hazing the freshmen. They were humiliating them, forcing them to drink unidentified liquids and stripping them of their dignity, while filming it for their own private trophy collection. Jax was standing over them like a king, a cruel smile on his face that made my skin crawl. I could hear the fear in those kids' voices, the genuine, raw terror, and I felt a cold rage wash over me. This wasn't a school prank. This was an assault. I knew I had to act. If I just stayed hidden, I was a coward. I stepped out from the shadows, not caring if I was seen, and walked right into the middle of the circle. The light from the hallway caught the lens on my strap, and for a second, the world seemed to freeze. Jax looked up, his eyes narrowing. "What are you doing here, Leo? This is private property," he spat, stepping toward me with his chest puffed out. His friends gathered around, forming a wall of muscle and intimidation. I didn't back down. My legs were shaking, but my voice was steady. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "It's not private anymore, Jax. You're live. To 300,000 people. Say hello to the world." The silence that followed was deafening. I held up my phone, showing him the live feed, the thousands of comments calling him a monster, the viewer count ticking up toward 500,000. His face went from confusion to realization, and then to pure, unadulterated terror. He lunged for me, screaming at his friends to get the camera, but it was too late. I ducked under his swing and ran toward the gym floor, right into the middle of the pep rally, with the camera still rolling. The scene was chaotic. I was running across the hardwood floor, Jax and his crew chasing me in front of the entire student body and faculty. The music stopped. The cheering turned to confused murmurs. I made it to the center of the court, right where the principal was standing with a microphone. I didn't say a word. I just pointed the camera at the principal, then at the chasing bullies, then at the equipment room. Within seconds, the school's security and the local police, who had been alerted by viewers calling the station from all over the country, swarmed the gym. The stream stayed live through the whole thing. The handcuffs being slapped onto Jax's wrists, the principal's shocked face as he realized his golden boys were being hauled away, and the look of pure terror on the faces of the Vanguard. I didn't stop the stream until I was being led away myself. The last thing the viewers saw was my face, exhausted, terrified, but finally free. The aftermath was a hurricane that tore through the entire community. The school tried to sweep it under the rug, claiming it was an isolated incident, but they couldn't because the video was everywhere. It was on the local news, it was trending on Twitter, and it was the lead story on every major outlet. Parents were protesting outside the school gates, demanding the resignation of the administration. Jax and 4 others were expelled immediately and faced criminal charges that would follow them for the rest of their lives. Mr. Henderson was placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into the bribery allegations I'd caught on tape, and later, he was quietly let go. But the hammer fell on me too, just as I feared. Because I had filmed people without their consent on school property and used a hidden device, I was hit with a long-term suspension and a privacy violation lawsuit from the parents of the kids I exposed. My school life is over. I can't go back there without being stared at. Some look at me like a god, a savior who finally broke the cycle, while others look at me like a rat who destroyed their children's futures. My parents are terrified of the legal bills, and for a while, I felt like I had burned my whole world down just to stay warm for a second. We had to hire a lawyer, and my dad had to take out a second mortgage. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I had made a mistake. But then, I started getting the messages. Hundreds, then thousands of them. Kids from other schools, kids from my own school, thanking me for finally showing what was really happening behind those closed doors. They told me that because of my stream, their schools were finally taking bullying seriously. One girl wrote to me saying she was about to drop out because of kids like Jax, but seeing him in handcuffs gave her the strength to stay. I realized then that even if I never set foot in a traditional classroom again, I had done something that mattered. I took the power back from the people who thought they owned us. I didn't just expose a few bullies. I exposed a system that allowed them to thrive. Looking back, I don't regret a single second of that stream. We live in a world where people think they can hide behind status, money, and scoreboard donations. But the truth has a way of finding the light, especially when there's a lens pointed at it. I learned that being brave isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right even when you know it might cost you everything. My life looks very different now. I'm finishing my diploma online, and I spend my time helping other kids document and report abuse safely. But for the first time, I can look in the mirror and see someone I actually respect. I'm not Leo the loser or the ghost. I'm just a guy who decided that enough was enough. If you learned anything from my story, let it be this. Don't let the bullies write your script. Take the pen, or the camera, and write it yourself. No one is untouchable if someone is willing to stand up and speak the truth. Like this video if you were on my side, and think the school was wrong to punish me for exposing the truth. Subscribe for more stories like this, because I have plenty more to tell about what really happens when people think nobody is watching, and the secrets they try to bury. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Did I go too far by live streaming it? Or was this the only way to make sure they couldn't cover it up? I'll see you all in the next story.